to say about mine then.
Good evening everyone, and welcome to the Nottinghamshire Police and Crime Commissioners Have Your Say event for Gedling. Caroline Henry, as I'm sure you'll be aware, was elected your Police and Crime Commissioner in May this year and is currently compiling her Police and Crime Plan for Nottinghamshire. You'll hear more about this shortly, but before we do, I just want to say that this event is all about you at home. It is your opportunity to ask questions to the Commissioner about improving policing and tackling crime in Gedling. So please do get involved online. In terms of the format of the session, I'll shortly hand over to Commissioner Henry to give her opening address before opening up the chat function on our social media stream. There you'll be able to submit your comments and questions, and we'll aim to pick them up as we go along. We will also join today by the Member of Parliament for Gedling, Tom Randall, who will be asking your questions to the Commissioner. We'll also be hearing from your Neighbourhood Inspector, Inspector Chris Pearson, a little later on, and Chief Inspector Heather Sutton, who will talk about the operational policing priorities that have been set for Gedling and the process for setting them. So without further ado, let me hand over to your Police and Crime Commissioner, Caroline Henry.
Thanks, Alessandra. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me for tonight's Have Your Say event for Gedling. This is one of a series of events that I'm running across Nottinghamshire as I get ready to put my police and crime plan priorities together. I was elected as your Police and Crime Commissioner in May, and I'm on a pledge to level up policing across Nottinghamshire, invest in visible frontline policing, to be tough on crime and put victims absolutely at the heart of our policing priorities. In taking office, I have a duty to issue a police and crime plan for Nottinghamshire. This will set the direction of local policing over the next 4 years, and my plan will be based on 3 simple priorities: preventing, responding, and supporting. First and foremost, I want to prevent crime from happening in the first place. I want to spend more time and resources in dealing with the causes rather than the consequences of crime. I've already invested in a range of crime prevention initiatives that are enabling us to do this, including programmes in Gedling to tackle bike theft, shoplifting, shed burglaries, and I'm also committed to preventing violence against women and girls. I've already invested nearly £3 million in domestic and sexual violence abuse services across the county in this year alone. I'm looking to invest in custody schemes to help divert more young people from crime, improve referrals and treatment outcomes for those with substance misuse, and look to do more work with schools to re-engage those young, vulnerable people. My second priority is that we're really effective in our response to crime and the issues that are of greatest concern to our communities. And this is where I really need your help. I want to know what are the main policing and crime priorities in your area. I want to hear about your experience of the police in Nottinghamshire, and I want to know what we can do better. And I can promise you, and that developing my plan, I'll be looking to increase police numbers in Nottinghamshire and to improve how visible and accessible they are in our communities. I'll be working with the police and other partners to ensure that we're making best use of our tools and powers so that you can see real and tangible improvements into the responses for issues of greatest concern. And my third and final but really important priority is to better support victims and communities to be safe and to feel safe, with some excellent victim support services in Nottinghamshire, particularly those supporting victims of domestic and sexual abuse. But I want them to be even better. I also want to ensure that residents have the confidence to report crime, absolutely safe in the knowledge that action will be taken. So I'm looking at a range of options to achieve this, but closer working with the criminal justice system is absolutely key. I want to ensure that my plan helps to deliver swifter justice to victims and brings more offenders to account. So, these are my provisional priorities for Nottinghamshire, based on the information that I've received to date and the thousands of conversations I've had with local residents. But I want to hear your views this evening. I want to know whether you feel these priorities are the right priorities for Nottinghamshire. And I want to hear about the crime and community issues affecting you in Gedling. And I can assure you that the feedback you provide me this evening will help shape my plan. So I encourage you, please take the opportunity to tell me what you think and what you want to see for crime and policing in your area. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Caroline, and thanks for coming this evening. And it's great to be here to speak with Caroline and the other officers. And we'll be taking your questions this evening, and I'll be asking your questions to the Commissioner and others. So thank you for submitting those. But first, if I might ask a question of my own to Chris Pearson, the Neighbourhood Police Inspector here in Gedling. Chris, what are your neighbourhood priorities?
Well, first of all, good evening. The neighbourhood policing priorities for Gedling at the moment are residential burglary, drug supply and antisocial behaviour. How are they set? So we hold a quarterly local police and priority setting meeting. That meeting takes place with our partners at Gedling Borough Council and is a meeting that I chair as the inspector for the area. We take into account a number of different sources of information, such as feedback from the local community that we might obtain through social media or surveys that we do. So recently we've ran the What Matters survey on our Force website, so that's given us a lot of information about what matters to our local communities. Alongside that, we utilise crime and antisocial behaviour data to give us an indication of the types of crime that we're recording across the area. And we also use feedback from the local councillors and elected members on behalf of the community as well. So I would say a wide variety of sources of information which help me to set those priorities for the quarter.
And you do a regular newsletter, which is a really in-depth newsletter, so you'd encourage people to have a look at that, and you're on Facebook as well, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So I publish a monthly newsletter which is shared on the Nottinghamshire Police website. It is also published on the Gedling Eye, so in our local media as well, and sent out via the Neighbourhood Alert service. So I would certainly encourage you to consider signing up for that service, which is available on the Nottinghamshire Police website. That will mean that my newsletter is emailed to you monthly by one of our community volunteers, which is fantastic. And also I add an update around our priorities to the Force website every month as well, so you can get a real feel for what we're doing in the community.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Chris. Okay, so we'll go to the first of your questions this evening, which is from Julie. And Julie asks, should police officers have their cameras on for the duration of their shift? Caroline.
Thank you for that question. And thank you for that question, Julie. It's really important that we use technology wisely and appropriately. And there are rules around when you should use body-worn video. It's governed by an internal force policy which complies with the guidance that's actually issued by the Surveillance Commissioner. So officers activate their cameras at the start of an incident or an encounter, and under normal circumstances will continue to record until it's no longer proportionate or necessary. Or another system takes over, such as CCTV, which would be in a police station. The reason for body-worn video falls into the following categories: collection of best evidence, safeguarding and protection of the vulnerable, and officer safety. It's actually really interesting when sometimes people put a complaint in against an officer and we say, well, we'll look at the body-worn video, and they say, oh no, we won't bother complaining. So it's a really useful tool. Officers will almost always use a camera when they're stopping a vehicle, going somewhere to arrest someone, searching a property, land or vehicle, performing a stop and search, attending a critical incident, or using a force against someone or someone's property, for example, taser or firearms. and unfortunately often have to use it as well when they're attending domestic abuse response. But if I pass over to Inspector Chris Pearson for a more operational view on why it's so important to have these cameras.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing I'd say is that every officer operational across the force wears a body-worn video camera when on duty. As the Commissioner alluded to, that's really, the use of that is based on necessity and proportionality, which I think really governs the use of any police equipment, to be honest. It's got some fantastic benefits for us in terms of capturing best evidence, which for me is perhaps accounts of victims, particularly those people who are vulnerable, the behaviour of suspects, and also encounters with members of the public where we are considering a stop search, arrest, etc. I think that's had some real benefits in promoting trust and confidence in the police, which is certainly something we want to continue to achieve. But also it's reduced complaints, it enables us to present the evidence to the courts, which of course increases guilty pleas as well. So I think they've got some real benefits. No, they're not used all the time, and I think there is an element of officer judgment in the use of any police equipment, to be honest.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. And we'll come to our next question, which is from Will in Burton Joyce. And Will asks, what can be done about motorbikes speeding through Burton Joyce? He says that my wife was nearly knocked over and someone will get killed or seriously injured.
Okay. We were speaking about this earlier because I know excessive speeding was one of your neighbourhood priorities in the past, wasn't it?
It was, yes. So during the lockdown period, I think it's fair to say that concerns around speeding increased across Gedling, but also we saw that across the whole force, mainly due to there being less vehicles on the road and therefore more opportunity for people to travel at higher speeds. We made speeding a policing priority in Gedling, certainly over the winter months. And as a team, we've carried out quite a lot of speed enforcement work. So just to give you an idea, we've issued as a neighbourhood policing team 32 traffic offence reports to drivers predominantly in our rural villages where we focus much of our time and attention. And recently we ran Operation Highway, which is an operation to target the fatal four, so the 4 different strands of road safety that generally lead to serious or fatal road accidents. And we dealt with a further 20 drivers there as well. We've really made it our business to focus on the villages where I think it's fair to say we've had the most complaints from. Looking at Burton Joyce specifically, we've been really fortunate to run a community road safety scheme in Burton Joyce. We have some fantastic volunteers living in the village who come out to work with my neighbourhood policing team, and that's really about first of all detecting speeding offences, but also then providing an opportunity for engagement and diversion, which is actually what we're about. We want people not to speed in the first place. So being able to give that advice has been really beneficial. And if I could just take the opportunity tonight to say thank you to those volunteers who give up their time for us, because I think without them it would be really difficult. So that's been a heavy presence. There's been a really heavy presence of that in Burton Joyce, and of course, yes, it was affected slightly by the coronavirus regulations. In terms of the ongoing concerns around speeding, we are now very much getting that scheme back up and running again. We've been fortunate to work with Tom on implementing a new community road safety scheme in the area of Southdale Road over in Carlton, where there are similar concerns in a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit zone outside of a local school. So I'm really looking forward to providing the training to those volunteers and to really having them embedded with the neighbourhood policing team at Carlton. And the final thing I would say about Burton Joyce is we met as a partnership earlier this year with the Highways Agency, with members of the parish council and the community to talk about ways that we could reduce speeding in the village. And we've agreed a set of measures around road signs, markings on the road, and just really enforcing the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit before motorists arrive in the village. So it's very much work in progress. There's been a huge amount of work done, but we're going to continue that over the coming months and certainly over the winter as well.
Thank you. And I just want to really echo a huge thank you to those community volunteers. And I know we are looking around about equipment for those volunteers.
Absolutely, yes.
We've been having ongoing conversations, haven't we, with them. A really good energy there from your MP, Tom Randall. Thank you.
Okay. And if I could add, as the MP for Burton Joyce, add my thanks to those who have volunteered and also those who have come forward to volunteer on the South Dale Road project. And thanks to the police for arranging to set up the training for that, and I'm looking forward to getting stuck in with that myself and getting on the streets and taking part as a member of that group. Okay, so we go on to our next question, which is from Mohammed in Woodthorpe. And Mohammed asks, we never see any cops where I live. If you ring, they take ages to come or don't come. What's going on with getting more cops?
Well, I'm sorry that's how you feel, Mohammed. We have been getting more cops. I will pass over to the Inspector Chris Pearson from an operational view of how many more cops you've been getting in Gedling. But I know there's more to do. We want more visible frontline policing, and I want you to be really confident that when you do call, you will get a response. But one plea I've always got, please call, whether it's a 101 or a 999 or an anonymous on Crime Stoppers. Let us know where the issues are, and I'll keep pushing to get more police there for you. If you have a pass across, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first thing that I would say is, as a force, Operation Uplift has been featured really for all of us for quite some time now, and I know as an organisation we're leading nationally around recruitment, and I've certainly felt the benefits of that. So at Gedling, on the Neighbourhood Police and Operation Reach teams, I've gained probably about 10 officers in the last couple of years. So that's a sergeant and 6 PCs on my proactive team, but also a number of extra officers have come into neighbourhood policing and our managed incident function as well. So we're really starting to see the benefits of that locally. And I'm not forgetting that of course also gives us access to other areas of the force, such as the knife crime team, who have a massive presence on our streets as well. In terms of the actual question around sort of visibility of the police as well, you know, we've been really fortunate at Gedling to receive new methods of transport, so electric bikes that were funded through our partnership, which have actually increased the accessibility and visibility of my team as well. So I really do think we're going in the right direction with officer numbers. We have a new beat manager now for the Calverton area as well, PC Nick Brennan, who's joined our team in the last few weeks. So yeah, going in the right direction for sure.
And you've also got a good use of special constables and volunteers in Gedling, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've always had a presence of special constables. We are currently just welcoming 3 new members of the special constabulary to our team at Gedling, which is fantastic to see.
You're having to do that because a lot of the specials actually love it so much they actually join up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Warranted police officers.
Yeah, absolutely. And in time, police community support officers and special constables have moved on. It's fantastic to retain them within the organisation, but it's also great to see that we've then had new special constables come to join us. But yes, we do have a number of volunteers who work with us as well. Some from neighbourhood watchers across Gedling who help with the sharing of crime and incident data for us. So lots of people involved. And then of course our colleagues at the council who help with that visibility. So the neighbourhood policing wardens who very much do patrol jointly with my team as well.
Yeah, and please do sign up to NOPS Alert so you can, and also the Chief Inspector Chris Pearson's newsletter, then you'll see, you know, how busy or amazing work your police officers are doing in Gedling.
Okay, thank you. Well, sort of on a similar theme, we come to a question from Gary in Arnold, who says that there are lots of problems with noise and youths in Arnold. They hang around causing trouble. It makes people feel unsafe. And Gary asks, what's the plan? I never see the police to deal with it.
Okay. Good question, Gary. Well, I think we've just established the police are there, but actually antisocial behaviour is very much a joined-up approach with the local council too, and also the city council. It's, ASB is actually the top priority for the neighbourhood policing team in Gedling, and they're working with the council and wider partners such as the youth service, who carry out detached youth work to reduce ASB reports, particular focus on open spaces and parks. There've been increased patrols recently, and the Operation Reacher colleagues working together to reduce those ASB concerns. Officers also carry out high visibility and do target days of action, and they are supported with officers in plain clothes too. So the officers may be there, you just don't realise it, but they are keeping an eye on what's happening. The neighbourhood policing team have recently carried out some work with Gedling Borough Council to issue a reminder that CCTV is in operation in key hotspots across the Gedling Borough. Now, actually, CCTV is so helpful. It forms a significant part of our strategy to reduce crime, antisocial behaviour, and to keep our communities safe. We actually funded through our office £10,000 for targeted youth outreach work and engagement activity. And actually, this was targeted at 10 young people with a risk of serious offending. Unfortunately, also child criminal exploitation, and there was a high level of ASB as well. So it's a partnership approach. I know you're targeting some work in Ravenshead at the moment, and if you just share your story with the community payback thing you did there?
Yeah, absolutely. So we suffered from a number of ASB issues in our rural villages as we started to come out of the COVID restrictions. It's fair to say that Ravenshead was one of the areas in Gedling that perhaps suffered the highest impact. Huge amount of work went on out there with the neighbourhood policing team, led by the beat manager, PC Chris Wild, and jointly with the council neighbourhood wardens. We received a report that some damage had been caused to one of the residents' gardens, actually. I believe it was some plants and flowers, etc., that had been damaged. We actually managed to locate the offenders for that offence, who later took part in a litter pick in the community. Why did we take that approach? Well, first of all, I'm a huge fan of the community resolution outcome, or restorative justice, as most people would probably know it. It gives people the chance to learn from their mistakes, and what we wanted to do on that particular occasion was to promote some ownership in the community. And to make young people realise that their behaviour is not acceptable, particularly in open spaces. So we experienced a lot of issues with drinking in our parks, causing damage and smashing glass, that type of thing, which is completely unacceptable. So I hope that through this approach we can provide some education and diversion. We were really well supported by the parish council in Ravenshead as well, who looked to help us fund community events. So there was some football on.
Have you been playing football?
I'm not very good at football, to be honest, but yes, some football events on a Friday night for young people as well. So, and I think it's fair to say we have seen an improvement in Ravenshead, but be under no illusions, we are continuing to patrol that village, as we are all of our rural villages. Jointly with the council, we are looking at future opportunities to collaborate around CCTV, around ANPR, and lots of different technology that's available to us. So we are spending a huge amount of time reducing ASB in those villages.
Yeah. ANPR is automatic number plate recognition. It's really helpful, and actually I'm very grateful that Gedling Council have actually paid £10,000. We've got ANPR in a vehicle, which I think you will, well, if you just say how helpful and what's that used for?
Yeah, so the Operation Reacher team, they took delivery of a new police vehicle which belongs sort of to their team. We were really fortunate at Gedling to be the first team to have automatic number plate recognition fitted to our police vehicle. I was actually out on patrol in that car on Friday night, having a huge amount of fun, and I got to experience that technology firsthand. It is brilliant, and it really limits the opportunity for travelling criminality. So that's people coming into the Gedling borough to commit crime. And a lot of our work shows that we do suffer as a borough from people coming in from other areas of the force, or even outside of Nottinghamshire. So that technology has been absolutely fantastic. It's resulted in vehicle seizures, in arrests, intelligence, drug seizures, and we continue to really use it every day.
I think it's a really innovative thing to do, to have ANPR in a car. I'm really keen that we get a real ring of steel of ANPR around our county. Absolutely. And we make our roads as hostile to anybody who wants to cause mischief and criminal behaviour as possible. We did have a conversation, and I've got to confess, we were talking about landlords, and because we've been talking about antisocial behaviour, I thought you meant landlords of pubs, but you didn't, you meant landlords of homes. And if you could just explain how that was so helpful too.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do receive a large number of antisocial behaviour calls in relation to antisocial behaviour in our homes. So that might be neighbours that don't get on particularly well, it could be noise issues, it could be all sorts of things, to be honest. We get a huge variation in complaints. Earlier this year, we worked with a private landlord to take action around tenants who were involved in noise, in antisocial behaviour, so drinking late at night, making a lot of noise, generally making the neighbours' life a misery, if I'm honest. And we were really well supported by the landlord in that setting to take action, which ultimately the tenancy was ended through the courts. And that really has helped us to repair the damage in that community. We also take that approach with social housing as well, working very closely with Jigsaw Homes, or formerly Gedling Homes, and a number of other social housing providers, where over the last 12 months we've actually secured a number of injunctions to reduce ASB in the community, and we use the Antisocial Behaviour Crime and Policing Act as well, which allows us to issue community protection notices, which are really effective.
Yeah, so I think you can hear from all of that, we are being really proactive. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, we'll come on to our next question, which is a subject on which I've had a lot of emails as the MP. It's from Joe in Mapley, who says, e-scooters are a menace. Kids ride them on the pavement and on the road without helmets. No consideration for pedestrians. What are you doing?
I think e-scooters are a bit Marmite, aren't they? I think I don't think the legal e-scooter that's happening in the city would come out as far as Gedling, would it?
It doesn't, no.
No, so it'd probably be really helpful for you to say what you can do in e-scooters in Gedling, and what you do if people are doing something they shouldn't be doing.
Yeah. I think the first thing I would say around e-scooters is there's very clearly at the moment a lack of knowledge around the legislation that underpins them. So they are classified as a mechanically propelled vehicle, or in simple terms a motor vehicle, and therefore they are subject to requiring technically on the roads a driving licence and insurance as any other vehicle. I appreciate completely that they've been brought for a number of young people, I think, across the borough, and we do see a lot of people riding them on the pavements, across junctions, etc. So the approach we've taken in Gedling at this time really is one of education to start with, and I think it's really important that we educate young people, we educate parents through our local schools and through education and engagement on the streets, to make it really clear about what is required in order to use them. We have unfortunately had two quite serious accidents in the Gedling borough this year involving the use of e-scooters, and clearly where there are aggravating factors, such as them being ridden down the road at high speed, then we will not hesitate to take action in those circumstances, because people have been injured. We did publish some advice on our website not long ago. It is also on the Gedling social media pages, so Facebook in particular, if anyone wanted to have a look at it. And there is a whole load of information available on the internet, which makes it really clear about what you need to use them on the roads.
So have you been getting lots of letters about e-scooters?
I've been getting a lot of those complaints, which, you know, and obviously people who go out into the city centre, you know, sort of walking down Clumber Street, the e-scooters are out there. So I know it's an ongoing trial that's happening in the city, but lots of people, you know, have got concerns about those. And I know we've had a conversation about that sort of legislative underpinning. So a bit of homework for me when I go back to Westminster to look into actually how this works and the law under it, which does need further work and further clarification.
Because out of all of us here, you are the lawmaker.
I know, yeah. So that falls on my shoulders, and we'll be, I think, looking into that. Yeah, get that cleared up. So we're going to go back to Arnold for our next question. Christoph in Arnold says that there's been a lot of burglaries recently, and I'm really worried. Are the police taking it seriously, and are they doing anything?
Okay. Well, hopefully, Christoph, you've heard that the police are taking it seriously, and they are doing lots. It is the top priority to tackle burglary in the neighbourhood priorities that we've been talking about. I'm also really committed to tackling it, and it will be featured in my police and crime plan. But if I go back to my three: preventing, responding and supporting. Preventing, as much as we can do, crime prevention messages. Make sure that your house is really secure. and also as communities, if we all look out for each other and reach out. Lots of burglaries happen when doors and windows are left open and unlocked. And I think we do push this message out, but I don't think we're all careful enough sometimes. So please be really careful with your home security. Responding. The police have a dedicated burglary team in the county, and they've been really successful in catching offenders. But there's more to be done. Supporting. I actually want to make sure if you sadly are a victim of burglary, that you have the best service from the police and also from the criminal justice system. As part of my plan, I will be investing in victim services and looking for assurances from the criminal justice system that they're operating in the best interest of victims. I know there has been recent increase in Ravenshead and Carlton with regard to burglaries. And whilst the forced burglary team are investigating the reports, operation team have been really busy carrying out patrols. And I want to just provide reassurance that further offences, we've got hotspot policing happening. I'll pass across to do not too much operational detail of what you're doing to stop it, but they are all over it. Really proactive. Patrols in rural villages, the AMPR car that we talked about, and I know that you've been stopping vehicles because of that. And also, if you could just mention the commercial burglaries that happened in Arnold, and because actually you've managed to get the person who did that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, the first thing I would say is that as a neighbourhood policing inspector, I completely understand the impact that burglary has on victims, and that's one of the real motivators for us as a team to want to have it as a priority in Gedling. You know, I can only imagine how distressing it is to people to realise that their personal homes have been invaded by offenders and the lasting damage that does. So yes, we have been focusing really hard on burglary across the area. I'm really pleased that in the last 12 months, residential burglary has actually fallen by 23% in Gedling. Whilst you might compare that to the time that we were in the coronavirus restrictions, it's actually 50% lower than it was in 2019, which I think is a reflection of the huge amount of work that the neighbourhood policing team are doing, that Operation Reach our colleagues are doing, but also the Forces burglary team, who we have a huge and a really good working relationship with to target offenders in our communities. Recently, much of our focus has been on Calverton, Ravenshead and Carlton over in the south of Gedling as well. We've sadly had some homes that have been targeted whilst people have been on holiday. What have we been doing about that? Well, first thing is we've been really sharing the crime prevention messages that we want to get out. We've had some great support from our neighbourhood watchers, particularly in Ravenshead, where some of the police service volunteers have helped us to circulate that information. We also have carried out hotspot policing. So the Operation Reach team, they deployed actually this weekend, just gone, out in the villages in the early hours of the morning, armed with their AMPR car, stopping cars, understanding who's out in those villages in the early hours of the morning, and that's really important for us because we gain intelligence from that, and hopefully we will prevent offences from happening in the first place, which is what we want to achieve. So that's really been the focus of our work over the last few weeks and months, so really getting into those villages. Earlier this year we had a series of commercial burglaries that happened in Arnold town centre. There was about 8 offences in total. Again, I certainly haven't lost sight of the fact that coronavirus has had a significant impact on local businesses, both financially and I know that burglary offences where they've had their tills stolen or products off the shelves will only add to that financial difficulty. Brilliant investigation carried out by CID colleagues and the neighbourhood policing team at Arnold, and the Operation Reach team all working together. That resulted in 2 significant arrests where we actually caught those offenders and put them before the courts, charged with 3 offences each. So that's really positive, and I'm pleased to report that those offences in Arnold have stopped now. So it shows that we're targeting the right people and that we're taking the right steps to prevent crime in the first place. The sort of final thing I would allude to around the businesses is Gedling Borough Council's CCTV system is absolutely fantastic. We spent some time recently, as you alluded to, Commissioner, in putting up some new signage in and around some of our hotspot areas to really just remind offenders, we are watching you. We have CCTV operators who are linked into our force control room. We're all talking to one another, and therefore if there are people out on the streets in the early hours of the morning who may well be involved in criminality, we're going to make sure that officers go and speak to those individuals.
Thank you for such a proactive response. I hope you heard that. Don't even think about it. We've got CCTV out there. We've got the AMPR. If you're a criminal, don't even think about coming to Gedling because they're determined to get you.
Okay, so our next question is from Elaine in Calverton, who says there's a lot of theft from farms and businesses where I live, and the police never seem to catch anybody. I heard there were more police, but I haven't seen any difference.
Well, I think we've just proved we do catch people who burgle from businesses, but I have been very vocal in the fact that I know there's some places that would like to have more policing, and I know how devastating it is for those farms when they lose machinery and how it impacts on what it's their livelihood and how difficult it actually is to get machinery back to those farms. I think we need to be clear, this is organised criminal activity. You know, these people come in, they know what they're after, and we've got plans in place, watch this space, of what we're going to do more to tackle this. But we do now have a rural crime lead, and I'd like to pass over to Chief Inspector Heather Sutton, just to talk more about what we are doing in the rural areas.
Thank you. So I'm the lead for Rural and Wildlife Crime for Notts Police. I also chair the Regional Enforcement Group, where it's our role as a group of neighbouring forces and partners to share cross-border issues and make sure the borders between us don't prevent any investigations or any intelligence sharing. We also have shared crime recording systems, so we're able to view crime reports and intelligence on offenders from other areas to ensure that that isn't an issue, as we understand a lot of the thefts from farms and businesses is linked to criminals who travel across the borders. So it's one of my roles as the chair of that group to make sure any of those barriers are removed and we share that intelligence. We are making small steps in the right direction to improve our response to rural crime. There is a dedicated beat manager in every rural crime area, and you can find out their details on the Notts Police website if you look into your area. You can speak to them for any advice or guidance that's specific to you, and if you want some crime prevention advice specific for your farm, give them a call and they'll come out and do that for you. We also had some feedback that officers weren't always well informed about the rural and wildlife crime legislation, that it's quite complicated. So we've now created and downloaded an app onto all of our officers' mobile phones that details that legislation to ensure that each officers have that information with them when they attend your crimes. We've recently trained 25 officers across the force to be wildlife crime officers, and in the last few months I've seen some really significant increase in the level of investigation and therefore identifying offenders for some of those wildlife crimes that then impacts on the rural communities and the kind of associated rural crimes, so the criminal damage across farmland. We have an off-road bike team as well who are able to deploy to areas where there's off-road bikes causing damage to farmland. There's 16 trained officers, we've got 5 bikes. They come under my department and we can deploy them to the hotspot locations. That isn't something that we've had raised as significant concern in Gedling, so if it is, please make sure that you report it through so Chris can collate that information and then request that the off-road bike team come to his area. There is an online reporting system which you can do on Notts Police. I understand a lot of the farmers are busy all of the time, but the online reporting system is there for you to share that information with us.
Thank you very much, Chief Inspector Sutton. And we know what a busy time of year it is for farmers at the moment, but I did recently visit a farm and there was really bad criminal damage. Somebody had been through a field of maize with a quad bike. Actually, no, the value of that maize that they squashed was a real issue, and but it hadn't actually been reported. I'm really keen to appeal to anybody I always report crime, but particularly I think we've really got to build our confidence in the rural community that we need to know what's happening. Please do report any criminal damage or anything else you think we ought to know about. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And if we can go from a rural to a very urban part of Gedling to a question from Manjit in Netherfield, who says there's a lot of drug dealing in Netherfield, and I worry about my family, and I want to see these people dealt with. So what are we doing about that?
Okay. I'm sorry to say drugs are a real issue in our society, and the causes and the solutions are really complicated. It has to be a joined-up approach, but I really recognise the impact that it has on individuals and communities. And in my plan, there's going to be a real big focus on really tackling this scourge of drugs. I actually committed to tackling drug dealing, and I will honour this pledge. So going back to my 3, preventing, responding, supporting. Preventing, an investment in drug treatment services across the county to ensure those that need help are able to get it, and proven to reduce crime and improve lives. Responding, committed to more drug enforcement operations. We want to target those dealers, reduce the impact on the communities, and those responsible for blighting our neighbourhoods must be dealt with harshly. And supporting, if you want help to get off drugs, the help is there. If you're a vulnerable person, you've got yourself in a pickle, you've been encouraged to get involved with county lines, or you know somebody who is, please reach out, get the help. You can report it through Crime Stoppers if you want to do it anonymously. We have a #NG website where we talk about young people and how they can get pulled into the horrible county lines or being cuckooed, which I'll ask the inspector to talk a little bit more about.
I think, well, first thing I'd say around drug supply is that we made that a priority in Gedling following survey results, which really did indicate an increasing level of concern in the community. Since the Operation Reach team started with us, there's been 2 main areas of the Gedling Borough that we focused on. The first being Netherfield, under the banner of Operation Thistle, and then over in the Arnold area, where sadly we saw some serious violence in the Front Street area, which we believe to be down to the use and supply of controlled drugs. The Operation Reach team and the Neighbourhood Policing team have worked together really ever since to carry out quite a significant amount of enforcement work across the area. So just to give you an idea, I brought a few figures along tonight. So we've carried out 57 magistrates' court warrants specifically aimed at drug supply offences. We've seized about 160, we've made 160 separate seizures of controlled drugs across Gedling, and we've taken £275,000 of suspected criminal money out of circulation. Along with that, of course, we've generated a huge amount of further intelligence which we'll be acting on in due course. So there's a couple of things really that I do want to say. The first one is there's often a viewpoint that we don't act on reported intelligence. It can sometimes take several weeks and months to develop to the standard that we need in order to obtain a warrant through the courts. So please do report your concerns to us. Please do keep them. Please do keep reporting them, either through Crime Stoppers, which is the Crime Stoppers charity, so that is completely anonymous, via the Nottinghamshire Police website, or through the 101 service. We want to hear from you. We want to get that information, and over time we will develop it and take enforcement action, as you can see from the amount of work that we've actually done in Gedling. So yes, there is absolutely more drugs enforcement to come. Over in the Arnold area, we've recently ran an investigation to target county lines, which was Operation Pagoda. That took us about 4 months to put together. It resulted in a day of action where we carried out 5 Misuse of Drugs Act warrants simultaneously across the county area. We made 3 arrests, we recovered cash, we recovered weapons, we recovered mobile phones, and one of those individuals was returned to prison immediately, which is exactly what we want to achieve, where those people are continuing to commit crime and make people's lives a misery. And I will never lose sight of the fact that drug use and supply is definitely linked to more serious violence that we see sadly played out on the streets. So it is a real focus for us, and I really wanted to go some way to addressing that increasing community concern across Gedling.
Yeah, because I'm always looking at statistics to find out what's happening in different areas. And I did look at the Gedling statistics. I thought, well, actually, you know, your drug arrests are up. Your more people with offensive weapons. I thought, is there a big issue? But actually, I think it's because you're actually arresting more people. So if you could just explain, on paper, it may look like the stats were worse, but actually, it's because you're being really effective in what you're doing.
Absolutely, yes. So I look at the figures quite a lot, to be honest, and try to understand trends, patterns, increases, etc. across the area. So yes, on paper, drugs offences have increased. I am completely confident that that's down to the great work of my team at Gedling and colleagues across the organisation who have helped us to develop intelligence, who have helped us investigate some of those individuals, and it is reflected in the figures.
Yeah, and you even got a retail premises, didn't you, closed down with enforcement?
Yeah, absolutely. So over in the Gedling South area, very sadly there was a retail premises that was involved in the supply of controlled drugs. We secured a court order to close that premises down for 3 months through the Magistrates Court. And, you know, the message is quite clear, really, where people are involved in drug supply. We will work with landlords, we will work with social housing providers, and if necessary, we will go to court and we will achieve those closure orders so that we can remove those individuals from where they are causing the most harm. And I think that's a really important point around this, is that yes, we can carry out a number of drugs warrants, but really we want those individuals, you know, we don't want them living in communities where people sadly are very affected by their behaviour.
Yeah. Would it be okay if you could just share what people should look out for? Because we spoke about earlier, didn't we, about cuckooing, about county lines, and I know you disrupting what's happening, but actually, you out there, if you see something that doesn't look right, please report it, and if I just pass across.
Yeah, absolutely. So county lines is an increasing issue. I think it's an increasing issue nationally, and it is very much around the exploitation of young people who are made to deliver drugs on behalf of drug dealers, and often that is into different counties. So sort of things that I would say to look out for, first of all, around young people. Are they taking, you know, taxi rides often that might be unexplained, as in, you know, parents don't really know where their young people, their young children or young adults are going when they get into taxis. But there are some other really significant factors as well, such as unexplained wealth. Have they returned home with designer clothes, designer trainers, new mobile phones? Are they going out at night and spending extended time away from home, which might be an indicator that, you know, that they are being exploited from people? And I know that's not in all cases, but I would say there are a number of different factors that, taken together, can obviously cause some concern. If you have got concerns about young people being involved in county lines, then obviously we want to know. We want to safeguard those young people. We want to gain intelligence about those individuals who are exploiting them. And we will go after them, and we will take whatever action is required to keep them safe. I chair the Neighbourhood Safeguarding and Disruption meeting in Gedling, which is a meeting that I carry out monthly with colleagues at Social Care, the Youth Justice Service and Gedling Borough Council. And that is about keeping people safe and really reducing the risk around some young people who have sadly been exploited in the last 12 to 18 months.
And it is exploitation. I was talking to a colleague yesterday, and she was telling me a story of somebody who they thought they was their friend, and they asked them to try a bit of drugs, and it was, well, actually, you don't need to pay for them, no, deal a bit for me, and just take this bag somewhere. And actually they set it up so this person got robbed, but it was actually a setup, so then this person had a big drug debt. And then these really horrible people said, but you've got a 6-year-old sister, just take some pictures of me of your 6-year-old sister. And the whole thing just spiraled, and this person got into a terrible, terrible place. and actually they weren't their friends ever, they were just being completely exploited. So please be really, really careful, and if you see something that doesn't look right, shout it out. And another terrible thing that people are doing at the moment is actually targeting people and using their houses or homes. This is called cuckooing. If you could just tell people what to look out for there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So very much similar signs of exploitation, to be honest, and that's changes in behaviour. So have they got people coming and going from their houses who might not be considered as friends, even if they portray themselves to be. And sadly, that is exploitation that we see in our communities. So very much, as I said, with the exploitation of young people, I'd really encourage reporting of that. We have had cases in Gedling of cuckooing and people, raising concerns about changes in lifestyle, wealth, people who shouldn't be at somebody's property. So we really want to hear about that, and we'll work really closely with our partners to keep people safe.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you both. So our next question is from Lisa in Mapley, and she says that I've heard a lot recently in the press about pet theft, and is pet theft a problem in Nottinghamshire?
Okay. Thank you for that question, Lisa. I've got a dog who I absolutely adore. She's completely part of the family, and if anything happened to her, I'd be devastated. So I understand why people are really concerned about their keeping their pets safe. Nottinghamshire Police were the first force in the country to actually appoint a dog theft lead. We've got a really bright Chief Inspector, Amy Stow-Jones, who's also got lots of chihuahuas. She loves her dogs too. And she's been really deep diving into this to see what was happening. When she looked at the numbers, there's not actually a massive increase in dog thefts, even though there's been a lot in media about it in Nottinghamshire. Unfortunately, they are dog thefts, but it's not as big an issue as you think it would be. The numbers haven't changed that much. And also, often when it's reported as a dog theft, it's more like a domestic fallout when a couple split up. One person says the dog's theirs, the other one said, well, I bought it for you as a present, and they all argue about who owns the dog. So it's reported as a dog theft, but actually, is it that a true dog theft, or is that just people falling out? I know that actually in Burton, Joyce, PCSO had an event on the subject of dog theft at the Lord Nelson Public House. And it was practical advice given then about how to keep your dog safe. Obviously, get your dog chipped is really important. And I know that event was really well attended by the community. And actually, it'd be really good to have more of those events. I'm sure you've got some planned, Inspector. And if I have any details of that, I'll share it on my social media too. But if I pass over for a few words from you.
Yeah, I think, what's really encouraging for me is that within the Gedling Borough, members of the public, they report their concerns to us.
Yeah.
So I have certainly seen an increase in suspicious incidents or concerns that may well be linked to dog theft. What I would say is that we always follow those reports up through the neighbourhood policing team. There are incidents that have been reported to us where we've attended to view CCTV, and in probably 99% of those cases we are wholly satisfied that it was perhaps a legitimate knock at the door, that type of thing. So I think that's really encouraging for us as an area and as a force. As the Commissioner mentioned, there was an event at the Lord Nelson Public House in Burton Joyce recently, centred around dog theft and things to look out for and practical steps to take to keep pets safe. And that was attended by PCSO Trev Parkinson from the neighbourhood policing team at Carlton. So I've very much sort of suggested that we look to run those events across Gedling. So that's certainly something I'll be following up over the next few weeks. If there are any sort of specific concerns locally, I will always talk about them in my newsletter. And also, we work really closely with our corporate comms team, so we would get that message out onto social media. So please, if you don't follow our social media pages, it's a really good thing to do because we do push out those crime prevention messages very quickly. So if there was a particular issue in a particular area, I would make sure that the community knew about it as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and as a dog-loving nation, remember there's lots of dogs that need rescuing. I know, please don't think about buying dogs from a pub car park. You know, be really careful where you get your beloved dog from, and we all look after our dogs.
Okay, well, it's good to hear that this is not an offence which is particularly problematic in Nottinghamshire, but I do know that it is something that a lot of people are exercised about and concerned about, and people have written to me to say this, and it's good. The government, as you may have heard, is introducing a separate offence for abduction, which is going to recognise the fact that if your pet is stolen, it's not just like somebody stealing your television. You know, there is an emotional impact to that, and that's going to be reflected in the separate offence which is being introduced at the moment. So our next question is from Minesh in Arnold, who asks, a short question from Minesh, but an important one: what money do you put into the area?
Thank you, Minesh. Well, the short answer is lots, but I'm sure you want lots more. I've spoken about trying to get people off drugs and alcohol. So we've got ongoing investment into substance misuse, and also domestic and sexual violence support services through the county council. We have the violence reduction unit, which does what it says on the tin, and Red Thread, who do diversion work. I've recently done a Make Knots Safe Fund. Now, this is where people can apply to get funding from our office if it fits into preventative work. Already, we've provided £24,825 grant funding to Gedling by the Safer Nottinghamshire Board. That's the SNB. Now, this is really helpful because it's partnership work, but this has been to specifically support some areas. So, targeted youth outreach and engagement activity. That was targeting ASB, £10,000. Reducing high volume incidents of shed burglary through target hardening. Now, target hardening, it's a bit of a police term, but it does exactly what it says on the tin. It actually makes those targets less attractive to criminals. So this particular one, there'd been a spate of shed burglars, so we actually did some shed alarms. Doing domestic abuse outreach via drop-in sessions with communities identified at being at highest risk. I've invested £5,000 in that. We've been working on substance misuse related to shop theft in cooperation with retailers, £2,000. Some rapid funding to tackle new issues emerging as COVID restrictions have eased during the summer, and that include demand related to serious acquisitive crime and nighttime economy. That was £6,325,000. And reducing cycle theft. We're doing a lot of advice on how to keep your bike safe and also cycling marking. I think that's about £1,000. I've got a long list, but if I could just pass across to the Inspector, thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of Police and Crime Commissioner funding, we've really utilised that in Gedling. So particularly around Arnold Town Centre, where it's fair to say we have seen some reports of antisocial behaviour. We're in a really fortunate position now of having colleagues from the youth services deployed onto the streets, so they're working together with the neighbourhood policing team. They're actually out on the streets at the weekend, in the evenings, engaging with young people and providing services for them to keep them away or divert them away from crime and antisocial behaviour, which is really positive. So that's how we utilise the funding. We've actually used some of the funding in Gedling to pay for very specific diversion opportunities for some young people as well, so perhaps where they've been involved in criminality. And we've not wanted to really criminalise young people. We wanted to look at education, those types of things. Then we've actually funded that through the funding stream. So really positive for us. I am seeing the benefits of it at Gedling. I mentioned the neighbourhood safeguarding and disruption meeting earlier. That's attended by the Community Safety Partnership, which is where we coordinate the sort of spending of some of that money.
So there's a lot of partnership work happening too. But please do fill in my survey so we know where you think that the help is needed. I think we've got to 8 o'clock. It's just gone really, really quickly. So I want to say thank you so much for everybody who's been here this evening. You've given me loads of food for thought, and you'll see the impact and influence that what you've had in my police and crime plan when I come to publish it in the autumn. The plan will not only set out policing priorities, but also the details of the resources that I'll make available to the Chief Constable on how to deliver them, and also how I'll hold the Chief Constable to account for delivering the plan, and the grants that I'll be making to help deliver the priorities on the plan. But in the meantime, I'm still listening, and I think it's very obvious that the Inspector, Chief Pearson, Chief Inspector Heather Sutton, and your wonderful MP, Tom Randall, are listening too. So once again, thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to working with you to make Nottinghamshire, and of course, particularly Gedling,